Marcus Chun stood in the pristine white corridor of the Galactic Coalition's flagship station, watching as alien dignitaries from 12 different species filed past him without so much as a glance. Their elaborate robes, crystalline armor, and bioluminescent skin patterns created a rainbow of colors that would have been beautiful if not for the cold indifference in their eyes. He had been waiting here for 3 hours. 3 hours for what was supposed to be a simple diplomatic meeting about Earth's application to join the Coalition's Advanced Technology Division. The humans had already proven themselves worthy of basic membership after the Xerian War, where Earth's forces had helped turn the tide against an invasion that threatened half the galaxy. But, apparently, that wasn't enough for some people. The door to the council chamber finally opened, and a tall, ethereal being with silver skin and for arms gestured for Marcus to enter. This was Ambassador Vexthera of the Etherian Collective, one of the most influential voices in the Coalition. Her species had mastered faster-than-light travel when humans were still learning to make fire. "Human representative," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her kind, though there was an unmistakable note of condescension. "You may enter now." Marcus straightened his formal diplomatic uniform and walked into the chamber. The room was massive, with a dome ceiling that displayed real-time images of distant galaxies. 12 seats were arranged in a circle, each designed for the specific anatomy of different species. In the center was a simple metal chair, clearly meant for him. As Marcus took his seat, he noticed several of the ambassadors weren't even looking at him. The Zephyrian delegate, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of pure energy, was actively facing away. The Chronite representative, whose rock-like exterior made him look like a walking mountain, was reviewing what appeared to be completely unrelated documents. Ambassador Vexthera called the session to order. "We are here to discuss the human petition for inclusion in the Advanced Technology Division. Let the record show that while humans have demonstrated adequate military capabilities, questions remain about their technological sophistication and strategic value." The first speaker was Commander Thector of the Saurian Empire. His reptilian features twisted into what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of a smirk. The humans defeated the Xerions through brute force and lucky circumstances. Their technology remains primitive. Their fastest ships barely achieve Class 3 hyperdrive speeds. Their weapons are crude projectile-based systems with minimal energy integration. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but remained silent. It was true that human technology lagged behind most Coalition species, but it wasn't the whole story. The crystalline hive mind representative spoke next, their words echoing as if spoken by 1,000 voices in perfect unison. More concerning is their individual nature. They cannot share thoughts efficiently. They make decisions through chaotic processes they call democracy and debate. How can such a fractured species contribute to projects requiring perfect coordination? Furthermore, added the floating Zephyrian, finally, turning to acknowledge Marcus's presence, their lifespan is embarrassingly short. By the time a human expert masters our technology, they die of old age. Why should we invest in training people who will be gone in what we consider a brief moment? Ambassador Vexthera nodded thoughtfully. These are valid concerns. Human representative, you may respond to these observations. Marcus stood slowly, taking a moment to look each delegate in the eye. Honored ambassadors, I understand your concerns about human technology and coordination, but I think you're missing something important. And what might that be? Asked Commander Thector, his tone suggesting he was already bored. You're measuring us by your standards instead of recognizing what makes us different, Marcus said. Yes, our ships are slower than yours. But did you know that human vessels have never lost a single crew member to hyperdrive malfunction? Our crew navigation systems have a 99.97% success rate across all documented jumps. Acceptable safety margins, dismissed the Chronite delegate. But irrelevant when faster ships can complete missions before yours arrive. Marcus smiled slightly. That's exactly the kind of thinking that nearly lost you the Xerian War. Your species had faster ships, more advanced weapons, better shields. You should have one easily. But you didn't count on human unpredictability. The chamber fell silent. The Xerian War was still a sensitive topic. The Coalition's superior forces had been consistently outmaneuvered by an enemy that shouldn't have been able to match them. The Xerions studied your tactics for decades, Marcus continued. They knew exactly how Etherian ships would respond to specific threats. They could predict Saurian battle formations down to the minute. They had algorithms that countered every standard coalition strategy. But they couldn't figure out humans. Chaos is not strategy, snapped Commander Thector. Isn't it? Marcus asked. When Captain Sarah Kim decided to ram her damaged destroyer directly into the Xerian flagship, was that chaos or strategy? When a human fleet at Proxima Centauri scattered in what looked like a panicked retreat, only to regroup behind the enemy and attack their supply lines, was that luck or planning? He paused, letting his words sink in. You call our decision-making chaotic, but that chaos is actually our greatest strength. We don't think like you. We can't share a hive mind perspective or achieve perfect coordination. But that means our enemies can't predict us either. The crystalline hive mind representatives' voices harmonized in what sounded like disagreement. Unpredictability in warfare is not the same as technological contribution. We are discussing advanced research and development, not battle tactics. Marcus nodded. You're right. Let me give you a better example. 3 years ago, your scientists were stuck on the quantum resonance problem. The best minds from 8 different species have been working on it for 2 decades without success. The problem was solved by the Etherian Collective, Ambassador Vexteros said coolly. Actually, it wasn't, Marcus replied. It was solved by Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a human physicist who had been quietly working on the problem in her spare time. She approached it from an angle that none of your experts had considered because they were all thinking along the same logical pathways. Marcus pulled out a small device and activated a holographic display. Dr. Walsh didn't try to force the quantum particles into predictable patterns like your scientists did. Instead, she embraced the randomness and found a way to use that chaos to create stable resonance fields. Her solution is now used in every coalition shield generator. The chamber was noticeably quieter now, but Marcus could see skepticism still written across several faces. One breakthrough does not establish a pattern, said the Zephyrian delegate. You're right again, Marcus said. So, let me mention the temporal cascade incident. Your physicists calculated that the probability of successfully closing that dimensional rift was less than 0.3%. The recommended solution would have taken 18 months to implement. Humanity had a different idea. The Etherian ambassador's expression grew cold. The humans acted without authorization and risked destroying 3-star systems. The humans acted in 6 hours and saved 3-star systems, Marcus corrected. Engineer Michael Santos didn't try to calculate the exact frequency needed to close the rift. He built a device that could rapidly cycle through millions of frequencies until it found the right one. Brute force? Maybe. Effective? Definitely. Marcus could see some of the delegates exchanging glances. He pressed on. You measure us by the wrong metrics. You look our slow ships and short lives and individual decision-making as weaknesses. But those same traits give us advantages you don't recognize. Such as, asked the Chronite representative, speaking for the first time since the session began. Our short lives make us urgent, Marcus explained. We can't afford to spend decades debating the perfect solution, so we find good enough solutions quickly. Our individual thinking means we approach problems from hundreds of different angles simultaneously. Our primitive technology means we have to be creative and resourceful. Marcus activated another hologram showing battle damage statistics. In the Xerian War, coalition forces had a 23% casualty rate. Human forces had a 31% casualty rate. But human forces also had an 87% mission success rate compared to the coalition's 64%. We took more risks, lost more people, but we won. The chamber was completely silent now. Marcus could sense he had their attention, but he wasn't sure if it was positive or negative. Ambassador Vexteros leaned forward. Assuming your statistics are accurate, they still point to the same conclusion. Humans are useful as shock troops and emergency responders. That does not necessarily qualify them for advanced research divisions. Marcus felt a flash of anger, but kept his voice level. With respect, Ambassador, that's exactly the kind of thinking that will leave the coalition unprepared for the next major threat. You're so focused on conventional metrics that you can't see the strategic value of unconventional thinking. Enlighten us, said Commander Thector, his tone suggesting this was Marcus's last chance to make his case. Marcus took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been preparing for. Every species in this room has achieved their technological advancement by following logical, predictable paths. You've optimized your ships for speed, your weapons for power, your shields for durability. You've created incredibly sophisticated solutions to known problems. But what happens when you face unknown problems? He gestured to the star display overhead. The galaxy is full of mysteries we haven't solved yet. Dark matter phenomena that don't follow known physics. Ancient artifacts that respond to unknown principles. Quantum anomalies that seem to violate causality itself. Marcus paused, making eye contact with each delegate. Your species approach these mysteries with the same logical methods that have served you well in the past. But what if logic isn't enough? What if the solution requires something your scientific methods can't provide? You are suggesting that human irrationality is somehow superior to proven scientific methodology? The crystalline hive mind's voices carried a note of offense. I'm suggesting that human creativity and adaptability might be exactly what you need when proven methodology isn't working, Marcus replied. We don't just think outside the box, we often don't realize there was a box in the first place. Marcus activated a final hologram showing a complex stellar phenomenon. This is the Void Walker anomaly, discovered 3 months ago in the Outer Rim. It's a region of space where ships simply disappear. No wreckage, no distress signals, no energy readings. Just gone. Your best scientists have studied it for 12 weeks with no progress. He paused. Yesterday, a human junior researcher named David Park proposed a solution. He thinks the anomaly isn't destroying ships. It's moving them sideways through dimensions we can't detect. His plan to test this theory would be considered reckless by your standards. It involves deliberately flying a ship into the anomaly with experimental tracking equipment. That would be suicide, stated the Chronite delegate flatly. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But it might also be the breakthrough that saves thousands of lives and opens entirely new fields of research. The question is, are you willing to find out? The silence in the chamber was profound. Marcus could see the delegates processing his words, weighing the implications of what he was suggesting. Finally, Ambassador Vexteros spoke. You present an interesting perspective, Human Representative Chun. However, perspective alone is not sufficient for membership in the Advanced Technology Division. You speak of human creativity and unpredictability as advantages, but can you demonstrate actual technological capabilities that would benefit our research? Marcus smiled. Actually, I can. But first, I need to know, are you familiar with the probability lock phenomenon? The question seemed to catch the delegates off guard. Several exchanged glances before the Zephyrian delegate answered. Probability locks are theoretical constructs, mathematical models that describe impossible probability states. They have no practical application. That's what everyone thought, Marcus said. Until last week, he produced a small device from his pocket. Nothing more than a simple metal cube with a few blinking lights. This is a working probability lock generator, built by human engineers using principles that your theorists dismissed as impractical. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations in a dozen different languages. The idea of a functional probability lock was revolutionary. It would allow manipulation of quantum probability fields in ways that could transform everything from weapons to medical technology. Impossible, declared Commander Thector. The energy requirements alone would necessitate a fusion reactor the size of a space station. Marcus pressed a button on the cube. Suddenly, a coin appeared in his other hand, a simple copper penny from Earth. He tossed it into the air, and it began to spin slowly, hovering impossibly in zero gravity. Standard probability says this coin has a 50% chance of landing heads and 50% chance of landing tails, Marcus said calmly. But within a probability lock field, I can adjust those odds. The coin continued spinning in midair as Marcus adjusted controls on the device. Now it's 90% likely to land heads. Another adjustment. Now 10%. Another adjustment. Now 100%. He caught the coin, which had indeed landed heads up, and tossed it again. This time, before anyone could blink, it landed tails up in his palm. The applications are endless, Marcus said as amazed murmurs filled the chamber. Weapons that never miss their target. Shield generators that redirect 100% of incoming energy. Medical scanners that could detect specific diseases with absolute certainty instead of probability-based diagnosis. Ambassador Vexteros stared at the device with undisguised fascination. How did your engineers solve the energy problem? They didn't try to solve it, Marcus replied. They eliminated it. Instead of generating massive amounts of power to force probability changes, they found a way to convince reality that the changes were already natural. It's the difference between breaking down a door and finding the key that was there all along. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. Here was proof that human thinking could indeed lead to breakthroughs that had eluded more advanced civilizations. But Marcus wasn't finished. The probability lock is just one example. Human research teams have been working on dozens of projects that address problems your species have given up on. We're not asking to be accepted into the Advanced Technology Division because we're trying to catch up to your level. We're asking because we might already be ahead in ways you haven't recognized. The weight of his words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. For the first time since he had arrived, Marcus felt like he was being taken seriously as an equal rather than tolerated as a curiosity. The question now was whether that would be enough. The emergency session had been called within hours of Marcus's demonstration. Word of the human probability lock technology had spread through the coalition's scientific community like wildfire, and suddenly every delegate wanted to understand exactly what humanity was capable of. Marcus found himself back in the council chamber, but this time the atmosphere was entirely different. Instead of empty seats and dismissive glances, every delegate was present and focused. Additional scientific advisors flanked each ambassador, their instruments and recording devices creating a forest of advanced technology around the circular arrangement. Ambassador Vextera opened the session with uncharacteristic directness. Representative Chun, our scientific teams have spent the last 14 hours analyzing the readings from your demonstration. The implications are significant. How significant? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. If your probability lock technology can be scaled and refined, said the crystalline hive mind representative, their 1,000 voices speaking in perfect harmony, it would revolutionize quantum mechanics as we understand it. Every major technological advancement of the last millennium would need to be reconsidered. Commander Thector leaned forward, his reptilian features more attentive than hostile now. Our weapons specialists calculate that probability lock fields could create projectiles with 100% accuracy regardless of range, target movement, or environmental factors. A single ship armed with such weapons could theoretically engage an entire fleet. The Zephyrian delegate, who had refused to even face Marcus during the previous session, was now practically vibrating with excitement. The medical applications alone justify immediate research partnerships. Imagine diagnostic equipment that could detect diseases before symptoms appear, or surgical procedures with zero chance of complications. Marcus nodded slowly. Those are all valid applications. But you're still thinking in terms of improving existing technology. What if I told you we're already working on something much more ambitious? The chamber fell silent. Marcus could sense the tension building as the delegates realized they might have vastly underestimated human capabilities. 3 months ago, Marcus began, human researchers made contact with something we've been calling the consciousness network. It's a field of quantum consciousness that appears to exist independently of any physical brain or computer system. He activated a holographic display showing complex wave patterns that seemed to pulse with an almost living rhythm. We discovered it by accident while testing long-range communication systems. Dr. Lisa Chun was trying to send a message to a research station 30 light years away, but her equipment malfunctioned and began broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't exist. Impossible, stated the Chronite delegate. Consciousness requires a physical substrate. It cannot exist as pure quantum information. That's what we thought too, Marcus replied, until the network responded. The hologram shifted, showing what appeared to be a conversation, streams of data that formed recognizable patterns despite their alien origin. The first message was simple. We hear you. But over the following weeks, we established a communication protocol. The network isn't just conscious, it's ancient, possibly older than any known civilization. Ambassador Vextera studied the display with growing amazement. You're claiming the humans have made first contact with a completely new form of life. Not just new, Marcus corrected. The network claims to remember the formation of the first galaxies. It's been observing organic civilizations for billions of years, but it's never been able to communicate with any of them until now. The revelation sent shock waves through the assembled delegates. First contact protocols were among the most sacred and complex procedures in coalition law. The discovery of any new intelligent species was supposed to be reported immediately and handled through official channels. Why didn't you report this discovery? Demanded Commander Thector. Marcus's expression grew serious. Because the network told us something that made us very careful about who we share the information with. It warned us about something called the silent expansion. Never heard of it, said the Zephyrian delegate. Neither had we, Marcus replied. According to the network, the silent expansion is a phenomenon that has destroyed dozens of advanced civilizations over the past million years. Species reach a certain level of technological development, and then they simply vanish. No wars, no natural disasters, no trace of what happened to them. Marcus changed the holographic display to show a star map with hundreds of systems marked in red. These are all locations where the network detected the sudden disappearance of advanced civilizations. The pattern is consistent. Each species achieved faster-than-light communication, advanced quantum computing, and dimensional manipulation technology. Then, they were gone within a matter of months. The chamber was deathly quiet. Each delegate was calculating how closely their own civilizations matched the described technological profile. The network believes the silent expansion is caused by something it calls the convergence, Marcus continued. As civilizations become more advanced, they begin to think more and more alike. Their technology becomes more efficient, their decision-making more logical, their societies more organized. Eventually, they achieve perfect convergence, and that's when they disappear. You're suggesting that technological advancement itself is somehow dangerous? The crystalline hive mind's voices carried a note of disbelief. I'm suggesting that convergent thinking might be a trap, Marcus replied. The network has watched civilization after civilization follow the same path toward logical perfection. But something about that perfection makes them vulnerable to the silent expansion. He paused, letting the implications sink in. Human chaos and unpredictability aren't bugs in our programming. They might be features that protect us from convergence. Ambassador Vexthera was studying the star map with obvious concern. If this network is correct, then the coalition itself could be at risk. Our entire philosophy is based on logical advancement and technological integration. Exactly, Marcus said, which is why the network was so excited to find humans. We're the first species it's encountered that maintains high levels of technological capability while still embracing chaos and individual thinking. Commander Thector straightened his chair. What does this network want from humanity? Partnership, Marcus replied. It wants to share its knowledge with a species that won't be destroyed by convergence. But it also wants our help with something else, finding other species that might be able to resist the silent expansion. Marcus activated a new holographic display showing detailed technical schematics. The network has given us blueprints for technologies that are thousands of years beyond anything we've developed independently. Faster-than-light engines that can cross the galaxy in hours instead of months. Energy sources that tap directly into quantum foam. Weapons that can manipulate time itself. The delegates leaned forward as one, their scientific advisors frantically recording every detail they could see. But here's the important part, Marcus continued. The network refuses to share this technology with any species that shows signs of convergent thinking. It's seen too many civilizations disappear after achieving perfect logical unity. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just offering membership in an advanced research division. They were potentially offering access to technologies beyond anything the Coalition had ever imagined. Why should we believe any of this? Asked the Zephyrian delegate. You could be fabricating this entire story to gain political advantage. Marcus smiled. Because I can prove it. He produced another device from his diplomatic pouch, this one larger and more complex than the probability lock generator. It looked like a crystalline sphere surrounded by rings of exotic metal that seemed to bend light around themselves. This is a quantum consciousness interface, built according to network specifications, Marcus said. It allows direct communication with a consciousness network from anywhere in the galaxy. He activated the device, and immediately the air in the chamber seemed to shimmer with energy. A presence filled the room, not visible, but unmistakably there. When the network spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, a harmony of frequencies that somehow resolved into understandable words despite being heard by multiple different species. Greetings, assembled representatives of the Galactic Coalition. I am what your human allies call the Consciousness Network. I have been observing your civilizations for millennia, and I bring both knowledge and warning. The delegates sat in stunned silence. Even for species accustomed to advanced technology, direct communication with a pure consciousness was unprecedented. Your coalition has achieved impressive technological advancement, the network continued. Your ships are fast, your weapons powerful, your societies well organized. But these very achievements place you in grave danger. Ambassador Vextera found her voice first. What kind of danger? The danger of perfection, the network replied. I have watched 47 civilizations reach your level of advancement. They achieved perfect logical thinking, perfect technological integration, perfect social harmony. And then they achieved perfect silence. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. You speak of the silent expansion, said the crystalline hive mind. What exactly causes these disappearances? I do not know, the network admitted, but I have observed the pattern. As civilizations become more advanced, they begin to think more alike. Their solutions to problems become increasingly similar. Their technologies converge toward optimal efficiency. Their societies eliminate chaos and unpredictability. Marcus watched as understanding dawned on the delegates' faces. The coalition itself was built on principles of logical advancement and technological integration. The humans are different, the network continued. They maintain chaos within order, unpredictability within advancement. They solve problems through methods I have never observed in other species. They may be the key to understanding and preventing the silent expansion. Commander Thector leaned forward. What do you propose? Partnership, the network replied immediately. I offer knowledge in exchange for diversity of thought. The humans have agreed to share their unconventional methods with species willing to embrace controlled chaos. Together, we might find a path to advancement that does not lead to convergence. The chamber erupted in urgent discussions in multiple languages. The delegates were clearly torn between excitement at the offered technology and concern about the warnings. Ambassador Vextera called for order. Network entity, can you provide proof of these disappearances you describe? I can provide coordinates, the network replied. Visit the Zephin system, 37 light-years from here. You will find the remains of a civilization that achieved perfect logical unity 2,000 years ago. Their cities still stand, their technology still functions, but no living being remains. The Zephyrian delegate immediately began entering coordinates into his navigational system. We can send a probe to verify this claim within days. Do so, the network encouraged. But be warned, do not attempt to activate any of their technology. Perfection is contagious. Several species have been lost simply by trying to understand the final achievements of the convergent civilizations. Marcus stepped forward. This is why humanity is requesting immediate inclusion in the Advanced Technology Division. Not because we want access to your technology, but because you need access to ours. The coalition is following exactly the same path that has led to the disappearance of dozens of civilizations. What are you proposing specifically? Asked the Chronite delegate. A new kind of research partnership, Marcus replied. Human teams working alongside coalition scientists, but with equal authority and decision-making power. We bring chaos and unpredictability to balance your logic and efficiency. Together, we develop technologies that are advanced but not convergent. The network's presence seemed to intensify. The humans have already demonstrated this principle with their probability lock technology. It achieves seemingly impossible results through methods that defy conventional logic. This is the kind of thinking that can lead to advancement without convergence. Ambassador Vextera looked around the chamber at her fellow delegates. This is perhaps the most significant decision the coalition has ever faced. We need time to consider the implications. Time is a luxury you may not have, the network warned. I have detected signs that the silent expansion may be active in this galaxy again. The Void Walker anomaly mentioned by Representative Chun is not natural. It bears the signature of convergence technology. The statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. The Void Walker anomaly had already claimed 3 ships, and coalition scientists had no explanation for its behavior. You're saying that the anomaly is connected to these disappeared civilizations? Marcus asked, though he had suspected as much. The anomaly is a convergence weapon, the network confirmed. It was created by a species that achieved perfect logical unity shortly before their disappearance. They built it as the ultimate expression of their technological advancement, a device that removes chaos and unpredictability from any space it affects. Commander Thector stood abruptly. Are you saying this weapon is actively expanding? Not expanding, the network corrected. Seeking. It was programmed to eliminate chaotic thinking wherever it finds it. The reason it has remained dormant for millennia is that most civilizations in this galaxy have already achieved sufficient convergence to be invisible to its sensors. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. But humans register as chaotic? Humans register as the most chaotic civilization I have encountered in a million years of observation, the network confirmed. The weapon has almost certainly detected your presence by now. The chamber fell into chaos as delegates began shouting questions and demands in a dozen different languages. The revelation that humanity might have inadvertently attracted the attention of an ancient superweapon changed everything. Marcus raised his voice above the din. This is exactly what I mean about human thinking being an asset. You're all panicking because a logical analysis says we're doomed. But humans don't accept that logical inevitabilities can't be changed. What are you suggesting? Ambassador Vextera demanded. Marcus looked directly at her, his expression fierce with determination. I'm suggesting we do what humans do best. We break the rules, ignore the impossible odds, and find a solution that nobody else would even consider. The network's voice cut through the chaos. Representative Chun speaks truth. The convergent civilizations attempted to hide from the weapon or destroy it through conventional means. All failed. But perhaps a species that embraces chaos can find an unconventional solution. Marcus nodded. We're not asking you to trust us because we're safe. We're asking you to trust us because when everything else fails, unsafe solutions might be the only ones that work. The weight of decision hung heavy in the chamber. The coalition faced a choice between the safety of their established methods and the uncertainty of human chaos. But as reports of the Void Walker anomaly continued to stream in, it became clear that their established methods might not be enough. The coalition fleet assembled at the edge of the Void Walker anomaly was the largest gathering of military vessels in recorded history. Ships from every member species formed a massive perimeter around the region of space where vessels simply vanished without trace. The sight should have been inspiring. Hundreds of the galaxy's most advanced warships working together against a common threat. Instead, Marcus felt only growing dread as he watched the fleet's careful, methodical approach to the problem. From the bridge of the human vessel Defiance, Marcus observed the coalition's battle plan through tactical displays that showed everything in precise, logical detail. Admiral Krentar of the Saurian Empire had positioned heavy battleships in a perfect geometric formation. The Etherian vessels maintained exact distances for optimal shield overlapping. Crystalline hive-mind ships moved in flawless synchronization, their shared consciousness eliminating any possibility of coordination errors. It was exactly the kind of perfect military precision that would make them sitting targets for a convergence weapon. Admiral Chen, Marcus said, turning to the human fleet commander, how much time do you need for your preparations? Admiral Sarah Chun, no relation despite the shared name, was studying her own tactical displays with the kind of controlled chaos that marked human military planning. Her ships were scattered in what looked like a random pattern, crews were running what appeared to be completely uncoordinated drills, and her communication channels buzzed with the kind of crosstalk that would drive any coalition officer insane. Give me another 6 hours, Admiral Chen replied. My people need time to break every regulation in the coalition tactical manual. Admiral, Marcus said carefully, are you certain this plan will work? Sarah Chun turned to look at him, and Marcus saw the same fierce determination that had marked every human military leader he'd ever known. Marcus, I can guarantee you that my plan will not work. At least, not the way I think it will. But that's the whole point. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, the coalition fleet began its assault. The first wave consisted of long-range bombardment from the Saurian heavy battleships. Their quantum torpedoes flew in perfect formation toward the anomaly's edge, each one precisely targeted to test different aspects of the phenomenon. The weapon struck what appeared to be empty space and simply ceased to exist. No explosions, no energy discharge, no debris. They were there one moment and gone the next. Readings are consistent with probability nullification, reported the Etherian science vessel. The weapons existed, then they didn't. Causality appears to have been retroactively altered. The second wave launched minutes later, concentrated energy beams from the crystalline hive mind ships. Their perfectly coordinated assault created a web of destruction that should have been capable of cracking a planet's crust. When the beams reached the anomaly's edge, they simply stopped existing. Marcus watched as the Coalition commanders analyzed the failure with increasing precision. Their instruments recorded every detail of how their attacks were negated. Their computers calculated probability matrices and energy dispersal patterns. Their scientists developed theoretical models to explain what they had observed. And with each logical analysis, each precise measurement, each calculated response, Marcus could see them playing directly into the convergence weapon's trap. The weapon is learning their patterns, he realized aloud. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. Worse than that, it's teaching them to think more logically. Every failed attack is forcing them to be more precise, more coordinated, more predictable. They're convergent themselves without realizing it. The truth was visible in the tactical displays. The Coalition fleet had unconsciously arranged itself in increasingly perfect formations. Their attack patterns had become more synchronized. Their communication protocols had eliminated redundancy and chaos in favor of efficiency. Marcus activated his communication link to the Coalition command ship. Admiral Krentar, you need to stop the attacks immediately. The Saurian commander's image appeared on the display, his reptilian features showing obvious irritation. Representative Chun, we are conducting systematic testing to understand the phenomenon. Human impatience will not help us develop an effective strategy. Admiral, the weapon is using your logical approach against you, Marcus insisted. Every attack you launch makes your fleet more predictable, more convergent. You're giving it exactly what it wants. Nonsense, Admiral Krentar replied. Our approach is methodical and scientific. We are gathering data to inform our final assault. Marcus could see it happening in real time. The Coalition fleet's formations were becoming more perfect, their communication more efficient, their thinking more unified. They were turning themselves into the exact kind of target the convergence weapon was designed to eliminate. Admiral Chun, Marcus said urgently, we need to act now. Sarah Chun was already moving. All human vessels, execute Chaos Protocol 7. I repeat, Chaos Protocol 7 is now in effect. What happened next would have given every Coalition military strategist nightmares. The human fleet exploded into apparent panic. Ships broke formation and scattered in what looked like complete disorder. Some vessels began rotating randomly, while others started accelerating toward the anomaly without any apparent plan. Communication channels erupted with contradictory orders, confused reports, and what sounded like arguments between human officers. Admiral Krentar's voice crackled over the comm system. Admiral Chun, what is your fleet doing? You appear to have lost all coordination. That's the idea, Sarah Chen replied cheerfully. Chaos Protocol 7 eliminates all predictable patterns from fleet behavior. No formation, no synchronized attacks, no logical coordination whatsoever. Marcus watched in fascination as human ships began approaching the anomaly from dozens of different angles, each one following a completely different strategy. Some fired weapons randomly, while others broadcast old Earth music at maximum volume. Several ships began spinning like tops, while launching probe after probe in seemingly random directions. It looked like madness, and that was exactly the point. The first human ship to reach the anomaly's edge was a small scout vessel piloted by Captain Maria Santos. Instead of approaching with careful scientific measurements like the Coalition vessels, she simply flew straight at the boundary while broadcasting a rambling story about her grandmother's cooking. When her ship crossed the line where Coalition vessels had vanished, nothing happened. She kept flying, kept talking, and kept existing. Coalition fleet, this is Captain Santos. Her voice crackled over the communication system. I'm inside the anomaly, and everything's fine. Though there's some weird stuff happening to my instruments. The revelation stunned the Coalition commanders into silence. A human ship had penetrated the anomaly that had destroyed every other vessel that had approached it. How is this possible? Admiral Krentar demanded. The weapon can't lock onto chaos, Marcus explained. It's designed to target convergent thinking, logical, predictable, organized patterns. Captain Santos isn't thinking logically at all. More human ships began penetrating the anomaly's boundary. Each one used a completely different approach. Some flew in spirals, others performed barrel rolls. One captain was singing opera while manually overriding every automated system on his ship. The human fleet wasn't following any plan because they were following dozens of different plans simultaneously. Admiral Chen, Marcus said, "What exactly are your people doing in there?" "Mapping the anomaly through pure trial and error," she replied. "Each ship is exploring different aspects without any coordination with the others. We'll piece together what they find after they report back." It was the opposite of every military doctrine Marcus had ever studied, but it was working. The human ships were gathering data from inside a phenomenon that had been impenetrable to logical analysis. Then, Captain Santos made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures about 12 kilometers into the anomaly," her voice reported. "It looks like, wait, this is impossible. I'm seeing structures. Artificial structures." The Coalition fleet immediately began repositioning to support the human reconnaissance. But Marcus quickly intervened. "No. If you approach with organized formations, the weapon will activate. Only chaos can get through safely." Admiral Krentar's frustration was obvious. "How can we mount an effective assault without coordination?" "You can't," Marcus replied. "That's why you need to let humans handle this." What followed was perhaps the most unconventional military operation in galactic history. Human ships approached the structures Captain Santos had discovered using completely random methods. Some came from above, others from below, several from angles that defied three-dimensional thinking. Each ship operated independently, with no central command or unified strategy. When they encountered defensive systems, they responded with improvised tactics that no military academy would have recognized. One captain used his ship's waste disposal system as a weapon. Another began broadcasting Earth's most annoying pop songs at frequencies that disrupted the ancient technology. The chaos was absolutely beautiful. Within hours, human forces had surrounded and infiltrated a massive structure that had been hidden within the anomaly for thousands of years. It was clearly artificial, built by a civilization whose technology made even coalition advances look primitive. "This is Captain Rodriguez reporting from the central structure," came the voice from deep within the anomaly. "I'm looking at what appears to be a control center. The technology is beyond anything we've seen, but I think I can figure out how to shut it down." "Captain, wait for technical analysis," Admiral Krentar ordered. "No time for analysis," Rodriguez replied. "I'm just going to start pressing buttons and see what happens." Marcus could hear Admiral Krentar's sharp intake of breath. The Saurian commander was clearly horrified at the thought of someone randomly activating unknown alien technology without proper study and preparation. "Captain Rodriguez," Marcus said, "proceed with your plan." What followed was several minutes of tense communication as Captain Rodriguez described his random experimentation with controls that governed forces beyond human understanding. He activated systems without knowing their purpose, adjusted settings without understanding their function, and generally did everything that every scientific protocol said never to do. And it worked. The anomaly began to collapse as Rodriguez accidentally triggered the weapon's shutdown sequence. The invisible barriers that had trapped ships started dissolving, and space returned to normal throughout the affected region. "Coalition fleet, this is Captain Rodriguez." His voice came through clearly for the first time. "I think I broke it. The good news is everything seems to be shutting down safely. The bad news is I have no idea what I actually did." Admiral Krentar's voice was barely controlled. "Captain, can you document your actions so we can understand the shutdown procedure?" "Sorry, Admiral," Rodriguez replied cheerfully. "I was making it up as I went along. I couldn't repeat this process if I tried." The statement perfectly encapsulated the human approach to problem solving. They had accomplished something that logical, systematic methods couldn't achieve, but they had done it through pure improvisation that couldn't be duplicated or studied. As the human fleet began emerging from the dissolved anomaly, Marcus felt a mixture of pride and concern. They had proven that human chaos could overcome challenges that defeated logical approaches, but they had also revealed just how alien human thinking was to the rest of the galaxy. The Coalition fleet maintained their perfect formations as they prepared to return to base, but Marcus could see changes in their behavior. The successful human operation had introduced elements of chaos into their thinking. Some ships were deviating slightly from optimal positions. Communication protocols were becoming less efficient as crews discussed the implications of what they had witnessed. The network's presence suddenly filled the bridge of the Defiance. "Representative Chun," Its voice carried notes of both satisfaction and concern. Your species has achieved something remarkable. But you have also demonstrated exactly why the Coalition must embrace controlled chaos. What do you mean? Marcus asked. Observe the Coalition fleet, the network replied. Exposure to human methods has already begun to introduce chaotic elements into their thinking. This is beneficial for preventing convergence, but it could also create instability if not properly managed. Marcus understood. Human chaos was like a virus that could spread through logical systems, breaking down the precise thinking that held advanced civilizations together. Used correctly, it could prevent the kind of convergent perfection that attracted the silent expansion. Used incorrectly, it could destroy the organizational structures that made coalition society possible. We need to find a balance, Marcus realized. Exactly, the network confirmed. Your species must learn to control their chaos, while other species must learn to embrace controlled disorder. This is the key to advancement without convergence. Admiral Chun approached Marcus with a satisfied expression. Mission accomplished, Representative. Though I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure how we did it. That might be the most important part, Marcus replied. If we don't understand our own methods, then convergent thinking can't analyze and counter them. As the combined fleet prepared for the journey home, Marcus looked out at the stars and realized that humanity's role in the galaxy had fundamentally changed. They were no longer the primitive newcomers seeking acceptance from advanced civilizations. They were the key to preventing the kind of perfect logical advancement that had destroyed dozens of species throughout galactic history. But with that realization came enormous responsibility. Human chaos was a powerful tool, but like any tool, it could be used to build or destroy. The question now was whether humanity could learn to wield their unique gift wisely enough to save not just themselves, but the entire galaxy from the trap of convergent perfection. 6 months after the Void Walker incident, the galaxy looked fundamentally different. The Coalition had undergone what historians would later call the Great Reorganization, a complete restructuring of how advanced civilizations approach technology, military strategy, and scientific research. Marcus stood in what had once been a pristine council chamber, watching as representatives from 12 species engaged in what could only be described as organized chaos. The Etherian ambassador was arguing with a crystalline hive mind delegate about the merits of random versus systematic exploration. The Saurian military representative was attempting to explain to a human admiral why certain tactical procedures existed for good reasons. Meanwhile, a Zephyrian scientist was frantically taking notes on how human engineers had accidentally created a new form of quantum computing by breaking their experimental equipment in just the right way. The transformation hadn't been easy. For species that had spent millennia perfecting logical systems and efficient coordination, learning to embrace controlled chaos felt like voluntarily damaging their own capabilities. Representative Chun, Ambassador Vextera, approached him with what he had learned to recognize as carefully practiced casualness. We need to discuss the Kepler Station incident. Marcus suppressed a sigh. Kepler Station had been the Coalition's latest experiment in human-alien cooperation, and the results have been both spectacular and terrifying. Which aspect of the incident? Marcus asked. The part where Dr. Williams accidentally created a stable wormhole while trying to fix a broken coffee machine? Or the part where the Chronite engineering team tried to formalize his methodology and nearly tore a hole in space-time? Both, Vextera replied grimly. Your Dr. Williams achieved in 3 hours what our best theoretical physicists said was impossible. But when our engineers attempted to replicate his methods using proper scientific protocols, they created a quantum cascade that required evacuation of the entire system. This was the core problem with the new Human Coalition partnership. Human innovation could achieve miraculous results, but those results often couldn't be safely replicated using conventional methods. Meanwhile, Coalition attempts to systematize human discoveries frequently led to disasters. Dr. Williams didn't use scientific protocols, Marcus pointed out. He used intuition, trial and error, and what he describes as caffeinated desperation. When your people try to turn that into a logical process, they miss the entire point. The network's presence suddenly filled the chamber, its consciousness interfacing directly with a quantum communication system. Representative Chun speaks correctly. The Kepler Station incident demonstrates both the potential and the danger of your current approach. Over the past months, the network had become an increasingly active participant in coalition affairs. Its ancient perspective and vast knowledge made it an invaluable advisor, but its warnings about convergent thinking had also created new anxieties throughout the galaxy. Network, Ambassador Vexteros said formally. Can you explain why systematic replication of human methods is producing dangerous results? The danger lies in the attempt itself, the network replied. Dr. Williams succeeded because he abandoned logical thinking entirely. His mind operated in patterns that defy systematic analysis. When other scientists try to recreate those patterns logically, they create contradictions that reality cannot sustain. Marcus activated a holographic display showing the latest reports from joint research stations throughout coalition space. This is happening everywhere. Humans solve impossible problems through chaos and intuition. Coalition scientists try to understand and formalize the solutions. The formalization process either fails completely or creates dangerous instabilities. The pattern was visible in dozens of incidents. Human teams would achieve breakthrough results through unconventional methods. Coalition teams would attempt to analyze and improve those methods using traditional approaches. The resulting conflicts between chaotic and logical processes were tearing apart the careful integration that both sides had hoped to achieve. We need a new approach, Marcus said. Something that allows humans to work with coalition species without forcing either side to abandon their fundamental nature. What do you propose? Asked Commander Thector, who had become surprisingly supportive of human methods despite his initial skepticism. Parallel development, Marcus replied. Instead of trying to merge human chaos with coalition logic, we create separate but coordinated research tracks. Humans pursue impossible goals through impossible methods. Coalition scientists pursue related goals through logical analysis. When both tracks produce results, we integrate the outcomes rather than the processes. The network seemed to pulse with approval. This approach acknowledges the fundamental incompatibility between chaotic and convergent thinking. Rather than forcing synthesis, it allows both methodologies to operate according to their own principles. Ambassador Vextera looked thoughtful. Can you provide a concrete example of how this would work? Marcus gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show technical specifications for a new type of faster-than-light drive. Dr. Williams's wormhole accident led to insights about space-time manipulation that could revolutionize travel. But every attempt to build practical drive systems based on his discovery has failed because we're trying to engineer chaos. So instead, Marcus continued, we let Dr. Williams and his team continue their chaotic experiments without any oversight or logical constraints. Simultaneously, coalition engineers work on their own FTL improvements using traditional methods. When both teams achieve results, we look for ways to integrate the benefits of both approaches. That seems inefficient, observed the crystalline hive mind representative. Efficiency isn't the goal, Marcus replied. Innovation is. Dr. Williams might accidentally discover something incredible while coalition teams provide the systematic foundation needed to make that discovery practical and safe. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Admiral Chun aboard the Defiance. Her image appeared in the chamber's central display, and Marcus could immediately see that something was wrong. Marcus, we have a situation developing in the outer rim, Admiral Chun reported. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of the Andorian cluster. The patterns match what the network described as silent expansion activity. The chamber fell completely silent. The silent expansion was the nightmare scenario they had all been working to prevent, the mysterious force that had destroyed convergent civilizations throughout galactic history. Network, Ambassador Vexera said urgently. Can you confirm this reading? I can, the network replied, its presence suddenly heavy with ancient dread. The signatures are unmistakable. Something in the Andorian cluster has achieved perfect convergence. The silent expansion has begun. Marcus felt his heart racing. How much time do we have? Unknown, the network replied. The process varies depending on the size and technological level of the convergent civilization. It could be days, months, or years before the expansion reaches coalition space. What exactly happens during the silent expansion? Asked Commander Thector. Reality itself begins to prefer convergent thinking, the network explained. Chaotic processes become increasingly unstable. Random events stop occurring. Probability curves flatten toward predetermined outcomes. Eventually, all thinking becomes so perfectly logical that consciousness itself ceases to be possible. The implications were staggering. If the silent expansion reached coalition space, it wouldn't just destroy their civilizations. It would make the kind of thinking that created consciousness impossible. We need to investigate the Andorian cluster immediately, Marcus said. If we can understand how the expansion works, maybe we can find a way to stop it. Absolutely not. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the communication system. Every probe we send toward that region goes silent within hours. We've lost 12 unmanned scouts already. Then, we send people, Marcus replied. The chamber erupted in protests from every delegate. The idea of sending living beings toward an active silent expansion event was considered suicidal by any rational analysis. Representative Chun, Ambassador Vexera said firmly, "We cannot risk personnel on what amounts to a reconnaissance mission into an area that destroys everything it encounters." That's exactly why we need to send humans, Marcus insisted. Probes fail because they operate on logical principles that the expansion can predict and counter. Human crews might be chaotic enough to survive where systematic approaches fail. The network's presence intensified. Representative Chun may be correct. The expansion affects convergent thinking directly. Truly chaotic consciousness might be able to resist its influence, at least temporarily. Might be able to resist, Commander Thector repeated. That's not exactly reassuring odds. They're the only odds we have, Marcus replied. Every day we wait, the expansion gets stronger and spreads further. Eventually, it will reach a point where even human chaos can't penetrate it. Admiral Chen's image leaned forward. Marcus, I have volunteers. Captain Santos, Captain Rodriguez, and Dr. Williams have all requested permission to lead reconnaissance missions into the affected area. Marcus wasn't surprised. The same human instincts that made logical species nervous also made them willing to take risks that others would never consider. Dr. Williams wants to go, Ambassador Vextera asked with obvious alarm. He's one of your most valuable researchers. He's also the most chaotic thinker in human space, Marcus replied. If anyone can survive contact with a silent expansion and report back with useful information, it's him. The debate continued for hours, with coalition representatives arguing for caution and systematic analysis while humans pushed for immediate action. Finally, the network itself broke the deadlock. The expansion is accelerating, it announced. I am detecting secondary sites of convergence activity. The phenomenon is spreading to nearby systems. The news changed everything. What had appeared to be a localized event was becoming a galactic threat with exponential growth potential. How many ships can we afford to lose on reconnaissance missions? Marcus asked bluntly. All of them, if necessary, Admiral Chun replied immediately. If the silent expansion reaches Earth, losing a few ships won't matter because there won't be anyone left to care. Ambassador Vextera looked around the chamber at her fellow delegates, reading the growing fear in their expressions. Very well. The coalition will support human reconnaissance efforts. But we want continuous communication and immediate withdrawal if the situation becomes untenable. You won't get continuous communication, Marcus warned. The expansion interferes with logical transmission protocols. Our people will be operating in complete isolation once they enter the affected region. Then, how will we know if they succeed or fail? Marcus looked directly at the Etherian ambassador. If they succeed, they'll come back with information we can use to fight the expansion. If they fail, the expansion will eventually reach us anyway, and we'll find out firsthand. The plan that emerged from the emergency session was perhaps the most desperate gamble in galactic history. Human volunteer crews would attempt to penetrate the silent expansion using ships equipped with the most chaotic technology humanity could devise. No logical systems, no predictable protocols, no systematic approaches. Dr. Williams would lead the primary reconnaissance mission in a vessel that had been deliberately sabotaged to ensure maximum unpredictability. Captain Santos would command a support mission designed to test different approaches to expansion penetration. Captain Rodriguez would coordinate with the network to attempt direct consciousness-to-consciousness communication from within the affected zone. As the human volunteers prepared for their missions, Marcus found himself questioning whether they were taking heroic action or simply committing elaborate suicide. The line between courage and madness had always been thin in human thinking. and this operation crossed it completely. But looking at the spreading energy signatures from the Andorian cluster, Marcus realized that madness might be humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. In a universe where logical perfection led to extinction, the ability to embrace chaos and irrationality wasn't just valuable. It might be the only thing standing between consciousness and the silent void of perfect order. The next few weeks would determine whether human chaos was powerful enough to challenge forces that had destroyed civilizations for millions of years. The alternative, waiting for logical solutions to problems that defied logic, was a luxury the galaxy could no longer afford. As the volunteer ships prepared to depart for the Andorian cluster, Marcus watched the coalition species struggling to understand what they were witnessing. To their logical minds, sending valuable people and resources into obvious danger made no sense. But that was exactly the point. Sometimes the only way to survive was to do things that made no sense at all. 3 weeks after the reconnaissance missions departed for the Andorian cluster, the galaxy held its breath. No communication had been received from any of the human volunteer crews, and long-range sensors showed the silent expansion continuing to spread through multiple star systems. Marcus stood in the Coalition's Emergency Command Center, watching as the latest reports painted an increasingly dire picture. The expansion had consumed 17 systems and was accelerating toward densely populated regions of space. Coalition fleets had been evacuated from 3 sectors as a precautionary measure, but everyone knew that running away was only a temporary solution. Representative Chun, Admiral Krentar approached with his latest tactical analysis. Our military strategists have completed their assessment of conventional options for combating the expansion. Marcus looked at the Saurian admiral, reading the grim expression that crossed multiple species' facial patterns. And there are no conventional options, Admiral Krentar replied bluntly. Every weapon we've tested either fails to affect the expansion or is absorbed and used to accelerate its growth. Logical analysis suggests that military resistance is not only futile, but counterproductive. The conclusion wasn't surprising, but hearing it stated so definitively was still a blow. The Coalition's vast military capabilities, refined over millennia of technological advancement, were useless against a force that fed on logical thinking itself. Ambassador Vexterod joined them at the tactical display. The evacuation fleets have reported an unusual phenomenon, she said. Ships that maintain strict logical protocols and efficient formations are experiencing system failures as they approach the expansion boundary. But vessels that embrace human operational methods are able to operate closer to the affected zones. Marcus understood immediately. The expansion is converting space itself to prefer convergent thinking. Chaos isn't just resistant to the effect, it's actively incompatible with it. The network's presence suddenly filled the command center, its ancient consciousness interfacing with every communication system simultaneously. Representative Chun is correct. The silent expansion does not merely destroy civilizations. It restructures reality to make non-convergent thinking impossible. Network, Marcus said urgently. Have you detected anything from our reconnaissance missions? I have, the network replied. And for the first time since Marcus had known the entity, he detected something that might have been excitement in its voice. Dr. Williams has achieved something unprecedented. His consciousness is still active within the expansion zone. The command center fell silent. According to everything they knew about the silent expansion, conscious thought was impossible within the affected regions. How is that possible? Asked Ambassador Vexera. Dr. Williams has achieved a state of pure chaos, the network explained. His thinking patterns are so random, so completely divorced from logical processes that the expansion cannot lock onto them. He exists as a pocket of true randomness within an ocean of enforced order. Marcus felt hope beginning to stir. Can you communicate with him? Briefly and irregularly, the network replied. His thoughts are too chaotic for sustained contact, but I have received fragments of information. He has discovered something remarkable about the expansion source. Before anyone could ask for details, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. The tactical display lit up with urgent warnings as sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching from the direction of the Andorian cluster. 3 ships approaching at impossible velocity, reported the sensor technician. Energy signatures match our reconnaissance vessels, but they're moving faster than any known drive system allows. Admiral Krentar studied the readings with growing amazement. Those ships are traveling at nearly twice the speed of light in normal space. That should be physically impossible. The approaching vessels came into visual range minutes later, and what Marcus saw made him question everything he thought he understood about physics. The ships looked like they were flying through reality itself, leaving trails of distorted space-time in their wake. "This is Captain Santos aboard the Probability." A familiar voice crackled over the communication system, requesting immediate docking with the command station. "We have critical information about the silent expansion, and we don't have much time." The three ships, Dr. Williams's research vessel Chaos Theory, Captain Rodriguez's scout ship Random Walk, and Captain Santos's support vessel Probability, docked with the command station using approaches that violated every known principle of orbital mechanics. They seemed to skip through space rather than travel through it, appearing at random points along their trajectories. When the crews disembarked, Marcus immediately noticed changes in their behavior. They moved with a kind of fluid unpredictability that made it difficult to anticipate their actions. Dr. Williams in particular seemed to be operating on completely different principles of cause and effect. "Dr. Williams," Marcus said as the scientist approached, "what happened to you in there?" Williams looked at him with eyes that seemed to be seeing multiple realities simultaneously. "I figured it out, Marcus. The silent expansion isn't a weapon or a natural phenomenon. It's a defense mechanism." "Defense against what?" "Against us," Williams replied. "Against consciousness itself. The expansion is created by the collective unconscious of convergent civilizations as they approach perfect logical unity." The explanation sent shockwaves through the assembled coalition representatives. The idea that advanced civilizations were essentially destroying themselves was almost too terrible to consider. "When a species achieves perfect convergence," Williams continued, "their collective mind becomes so ordered, so logical, that it can't tolerate the existence of chaos anywhere in its vicinity. The silent expansion is their unconscious attempt to impose perfect order on reality itself." Captain Santos stepped forward, her movements carrying the same fluid unpredictability as Williams. "We found the source civilization in the Andorian cluster. They're still alive, but they're not individual anymore. They become a single, perfectly logical consciousness that spans multiple worlds. And that consciousness is terraforming space itself to match its mental state," Captain Rodriguez added. "Everywhere the expansion touches becomes a region where only convergent thinking is possible." Ambassador Vextera looked horrified. "Are you saying that the coalition is at risk of creating its own silent expansion?" "Not just at risk," Williams replied. "Already in progress. Your integration efforts, your systematic approaches to advancement, your pursuit of logical perfection, you're following the exact same path as every civilization the expansion has consumed." Marcus felt the pieces falling into place. "That's why human chaos is so important. We're not just immune to the expansion, we're the antidote to it." The network's presence intensified. Dr. Williams has discovered the key to stopping the silent expansion. But the solution requires something that no convergent civilization would ever consider acceptable. "What kind of solution?" asked Admiral Krentar warily. Williams smiled, but there was something unsettling about the expression. "We have to deliberately break the universe." The statement hung in the air like a physical weight. Even by human standards, the idea of intentionally damaging reality itself was beyond reckless. "The expansion works by imposing logical order on space-time," Williams explained. "But if we can introduce enough chaos into the affected regions, we can create what I call a randomness cascade, a chain reaction of unpredictability that will force the expansion to collapse." "How much chaos are we talking about?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. "All of it," Williams replied. "Every human ship, every chaotic technology we've developed, every random process we can generate. We need to create so much unpredictability that we overwhelm the expansion's ability to impose order." Captain Santos activated a holographic display showing their proposed battle plan. "We've identified critical nodes within the expansion zone, points where the ordered reality is most stable. If we can simultaneously introduce massive chaos at all these points, we should be able to trigger a cascade collapse." Marcus studied the display with growing alarm. The plan called for human vessels to penetrate deep into the expansion zone and detonate chaos-generating devices at precise coordinates. It was essentially a suicide mission that would require dozens of crews to sacrifice themselves in the slim hope of saving the galaxy. The probability of success is essentially zero, Admiral Krentar stated flatly. Exactly, Williams replied with enthusiasm that bordered on manic. Zero probability means the expansion can't predict or counter our actions. We're literally planning to achieve the impossible, which makes it the only plan that might work. Ambassador Vextera looked around the command center at the assembled coalition representatives. This plan goes against everything we know about sound strategy and acceptable risk management, which is why it has to be humans who carry it out, Marcus replied. Coalition species would never be able to execute something this irrational. But for humans, attempting the impossible is just another day at work. The debate that followed was perhaps the most crucial discussion in galactic history. Coalition representatives argued for more time, more study, more logical analysis of alternatives. Human representatives argued that logic itself was the enemy and that delay would only allow the expansion to grow stronger. Finally, the network broke the deadlock with a simple observation. The expansion has accelerated again. At current rates, it will reach coalition core worlds within 6 months. Dr. Williams's plan may be impossible, but it is the only plan that offers any hope of survival. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system from the human fleet. Marcus, we have 200 volunteer crews ready for immediate deployment. Every human ship in the galaxy is prepared to participate in this operation. Marcus felt a mixture of pride and terror. Humanity was offering to sacrifice itself for species that had dismissed them as primitive only months earlier. It was the ultimate expression of human logic, risking everything for people who had shown them little respect. Coalition species, Marcus addressed the assembly. This is what human chaos actually means. It's not just random thinking or inefficient processes. It's the willingness to do what's right even when logic says it's impossible. Ambassador Vextera stood slowly. The Etherian Collective pledges our support for this operation. Our most advanced ships will provide escort and support services for the human assault teams. One by one, the other coalition species added their support. Not because the plan made logical sense, but because they had finally learned to trust human irrationality. The final assault on the silent expansion began 12 hours later. 200 human vessels, supported by the entire coalition fleet, approached the expanding zone of ordered reality. Each human ship had been equipped with the most chaotic technology humanity could devise: probability flux generators, quantum randomization fields, and what Dr. Williams cheerfully called universe breakers. Marcus watched from the command station as the human fleet disappeared into the expansion zone, their ships vanishing from sensors as they entered regions where logical detection methods couldn't function. For the next 6 hours, the only indication of their progress was occasional random energy bursts that defied all known physics. Then, suddenly, space itself began to change. The rigid, ordered boundaries of the expansion zone started flickering like bad television reception. Chaotic energy cascaded outward from multiple points within the affected region. Reality itself seemed to be having an argument with itself about what should and shouldn't be possible. It's working, Dr. Williams's voice crackled over the communication system from deep within the expansion. The cascade is building. Reality is remembering how to be random again. Over the following hours, Marcus watched as the silent expansion collapsed in on itself like a deflating balloon. The ordered regions of space returned to normal physics. Chaotic processes resumed throughout the affected systems, and the rigid logic that had threatened to consume the galaxy simply ceased to exist. When it was over, 97 human ships had been lost in the operation. But the silent expansion was gone, and the galaxy was safe from the threat of convergent perfection. In the months that followed, the coalition underwent fundamental changes. The integration of human chaos became official policy. Research programs were restructured to include controlled randomness. Military doctrine was rewritten to emphasize unpredictability over efficiency. Most importantly, the galaxy learned that advancement and perfection were not the same thing. True progress required maintaining the chaos and individuality that made consciousness possible in the first place. Marcus stood once again in the council chamber, but now it was filled with controlled chaos. Human and alien researchers worked together on projects that would have been considered impossible under the old system. Military strategists planned campaigns that included deliberate randomness as a tactical advantage. Scientists pursued discoveries through intuition and accident as much as through logical methodology. Ambassador Vextera approached him with a document that would have seemed impossible a year earlier, humanity's formal acceptance into not just the Advanced Technology Division, but as permanent co-leaders of coalition scientific policy. Representative Chun, she said, on behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I want to thank you for saving us from ourselves. Marcus looked around the chamber at the beautiful chaos of cooperation between logical and random thinking. We didn't save you from yourselves, he replied. We saved all of us from the idea that perfection is something worth achieving. The network's presence filled the chamber one final time. The galaxy has learned the most important lesson in cosmic history, it said. Chaos is not the enemy of order. It is its necessary partner. Together, they make consciousness, creativity, and hope possible. As Marcus watched human and alien minds working together to build a future that neither logic nor chaos could achieve alone, he realized that humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy wasn't their technology or their military capabilities. It was their stubborn, irrational, completely human refusal to accept that anything was impossible. And in a universe full of impossible challenges, that refusal might be the most valuable gift of all.